Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Argos Where We Stand, Achieving Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion event at Grey Cup Unite. Thanks for everyone in attendance today. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. My name is Matt Black, retired defensive back for the Toronto Argonauts and present-day player relations advisor with the club. With us today, I have a few of MLSE's top executives, and I'm pleased to introduce Michael Pinball Clemons, the General Manager of the Toronto Argonauts, the General Manager of the Toronto FC, Ali Curtis, and our Senior Vice President of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Teri Dennis-Davies.
Woo!
Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing?
I'm fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good, good. And a very special welcome to you, Teri. Welcome to the MLSE family.
I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Awesome, amazing. Well, I don't want to waste too much time because we're having a really, really important discussion today, and I want to jump right into it. So we're here to talk about the extremely important topic of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And our first question is a two-part question, and it's about your immediate reactions. What were your immediate reactions when you saw the news of George Floyd's death on May 25th? Seeing the protests not only in the United States, but across the world, why did this time feel different? Mike, I'm going to send this over to you first.
Well, Matt, I try to be a positive guy, and this reaction for me was different than other times. It was something that I thought I had built a level of immunity to, and being insensitive to humanity is never sensitive, but I had experienced so much in my life that I accepted that in many ways this is the way things are and I can't change it. But there was this sense of helplessness, this hopelessness that I hadn't felt since I was a kid in Florida, growing up in Florida, and it really is indescribable. I felt like, when is this going to change?
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. So Ali, I'll send this to you next. What was your, immediate reaction when you saw the news of George Floyd's death?
Yeah, I much like everyone around the world, I had a range of emotions. It wasn't just one feeling of sadness or desperation, but it was also anger and disappointment, fear, all those things that you kind of feel when you see something horrific as we saw. And it was difficult. And, I kind of was trying to look within myself, but also, I had an eye on my kids and all those types of things, and thinking about, our situation and so just a lot was kind of going through my head and through my heart, I think, in that moment. And, just trying to process everything. I think one of my immediate reactions, I think, was there was this sense of feeling that needed to acknowledge in a public way what was going on, what had just happened, and that it was wrong. And so in that sense, one of the reactions that I had was, we've got to say something and speak out loud on behalf of Toronto FC. And I was grateful that we got a note out to the public about what had happened. I immediately sent an email to all the GMs in MLS to encourage them to reach out to the communications departments to acknowledge that something had just happened that was wrong, and that we should all feel differently about this, and we all should try to do something. So just a really difficult moment. I'm not sure that I don't know exactly how I reacted in that moment as well, just because it all happened so quickly. There were so many things going through my head, like most folks, but it was it was a difficult period of time.
Yeah, it was difficult for many people, and I think the protests around the world showed that. Teri, what was your immediate reaction, and why did this time feel different, so to speak, for you?
Yeah, I think much like what you've heard already in terms of the range of emotion, I for sure felt the same thing. And I can't point to sort of one emotion versus another. I did watch the video with my daughter, and I think as a parent, as a mother, you know, sitting next to her as her eyes were welling up with tears, I saw it. I think for the first time, truly through her lens, and then it made me think about, you know, my brothers, my sisters that are in the U.S. And my father. It made me think from a protective standpoint. You know, what could I do to help protect them from these feelings? And you know, it was gut wrenching. And so that sense of not knowing what to do and of helplessness in trying to find a quick solution to ease that pain was, I think, what I remember the most.
Yeah, definitely. Full time, full of emotion for so many people, and it was, felt, I think, not only in the United States but across the world. So a very impactful moment, and kind of sparked some changes and a lot of, especially in the athletic community, it sparked a lot of emotion from a lot of players. And our own Toronto Raptors, they showed up at the NBA bubble, rolled in on their buses decaled with Black Lives Matter, emblazoned right on the side of the bus. We saw the NBA players during the course of the playoffs take a very strong stance, and very vocal as well. The Toronto FC and MLS have continued to share their message during their season. And here we sit today, 6 months after the death of George Floyd. And does it feel different today than it did, back on May 25th when you first, learned of this? Curtis or Ali, I'll send this to you.
Yeah, so thanks. That's a really good question. It doesn't feel different, I guess sometimes, the time it heals, some of the wounds, but I think in sports we're kind of, I don't know if we're conditioned or if we're taught, but somehow we like to remember what it feels like. And that helps us to kind of cope with and plan and move forward. Whether it's a championship game or and you lost that game, or you've overcome a particular obstacle. But I think for sure in sports, you remember what it's like, for better or for worse. And you use that kind of as motivation to improve and to get better and to kind of see daylight and all those types of good things of where you want to be on the horizon. I think it's especially present in sport. And from my perspective, this is, while it's completely different, there is a sense of emotion and fatigue and all these types of things that I think about when I think about that event. And it's not just that event, it's everything kind of like layers on top of it. I think from my perspective, the first time I saw that type of brutality on video was, I think, in the early 90s, saw Rodney King. And you always kind of remember these types of events, and you remember how they made you feel, and you hope that we can take that, use it as motivation, and turn that negative into a positive. And been working with Michael and working with folks at MLSE, and I'm so happy that Teri's here, so that hopefully we can use that event, that horrendous event, as an opportunity to get better and to improve, so that we don't encounter these things moving forward.
That's amazing. Really looking at ourselves and seeing how we can change, and the change that we can affect. So that's amazing. Michael, next to you, please. Your response as to how things feel different, or does it feel different 6 months later?
I during this COVID time, we seem to do everything virtual. And I heard a young man doing his high school graduation, and he was talking to high school graduates, and he says, many people want to leave a mark in life, but I don't want to leave a mark. I want to leave a scar, because the scar can't be removed. And when we see some of the challenges that we go through, some of the evils, um, just as was alluded to, right? When we have these indelible marks, they remind us, right, of staying principled. So I love Ali's answer and the way he positioned that. But for me, there was uh, a crazy familiarity for me in what happened to George Floyd, and though it's so tragic, and but there was a familiarity. I hadn't seen anything quite like that, but there was a familiarity of occurrences, of things that had taken place, not only in police and legal system, but education and health as well. But the way I feel now, though, it is different. I do believe that we are moving forward and more cognizant. There's a greater level of freedom around expressing how we feel. Our greater community is also expressing that, and the presence of Teri Dennis-Davies is so important to who we are and where we're going, and quite frankly, without the scar, we wouldn't have her here.
Yeah, so we're starting to see the change, I guess the slow trickle of change happen, here, but also, as you mentioned, in front of our eyes around the world. Teri, how do you feel, this is different now? How do you think things have changed?
Well, I think the emotion of what happened, I'm not sure on a personal level that has changed a lot in the last 6 to 8 months. But I think, my being a part of MLSE now, and the signal of this role internally and externally means a lot. And I think about the fact that, there have been a lot of conversations, and through those conversations, a level of learning that I think transcends maybe what we've seen in the past, and a heightened level of empathy for the experience of Black people globally and other racialized groups. That coupled with COVID-19 has been, I think, really eye-opening for, the broader community. And so with that empathy, and with, that emotion, I think we have a real opportunity to mobilize, using that momentum to move into action. When you talk about something like systemic racism that is so structural and so much a part of the ecosystem that we don't often even think about, there's tremendous opportunity to dig deep and do the work to understand, how those barriers that we take for granted for so many different groups, that we actually call them out into the light, and do what we can to eliminate them or mitigate the impact of those barriers on people, living really their best lives. My teenage son just talks about living his best life. And when I sit back and think about that as a parent, all I want to do is eliminate any barriers that could get in his way. And so, that's why I'm super thrilled to be a part of MLSE at this time.
That's really amazing. I like what you said. They're doing the work, and I think that's a really important theme that we we're seeing right now, especially with your role, it's an opportunity for us here at MLSE to do the work and to affect the change that we can. And I think we've seen that across our 4 teams so far, and it's really inspiring to me actually to be a part of this and to be a young person in the sports world. And we're doing a great job so far. Always could do more, but this is, as you mentioned, this is part of doing the work right now. So this leads us to our next question right now that I have is, Toronto's one of the most diverse cities in the world and the most diverse city in Canada. And what do you see as the difference between Toronto and some of the issues that some cities, our neighbors south of the border, face? And where does the change come from for those that aren't in corporate Canada, corporate America, or the sports world in general? Teri, I want to start with you on this one. Where do you think that change starts?
Yeah, so I'm from the United States, and I've had the opportunity to live in the Caribbean as well, in the Bahamas, and now I'm in Canada. And so my perspective is fairly broad, and I think that across the board, regardless of where you are, I think we have to shine a light on ourselves and look in the mirror and think about the bias that we all have, and how that bias actually manifests itself in the decisions that we make. We make, thousands and thousands of decisions every single day. And, how do we take action to ensure that those decisions that are based on bias that is going to negatively impact, a particular group, how are we going to change that? How are we going to interrupt that activity in our brain, and practice it, build that muscle so that we, from a behavioral standpoint, can start to think differently and interact with people that are different from ourselves. So I think the most powerful step, in my view, is to start individually, looking at how we interact with other people.
Amazing. Yeah, that's where all change starts, with our own self. And I really appreciate that perspective, because it's a good reminder that we all have a part in this, right? It's not going to happen overnight, but we all need to chip in and start with ourselves. So, Mike, what's your take on this, on how change kind of is affected, for those that aren't here in Canada or corporate America or the sports world?
There's a Chinese proverb that says, vision without action is a daydream. Action without vision is a nightmare, right? So our real job is to turn vision into action, as Teri so eloquently stated. So here, I believe that true change does, the only person you can actually change is yourself. So it has to start with you. Part of that is understanding, as a person who might be marginalized, that you're not defined by other people about what they say, how they act, what they do, right? Now, you can be affected by it, certainly, right? But, right, that is not the determinant. It is the things that we do, what we partake in. On the other side, it is looking in to that window to really acknowledge what is. And one of the real difficulties is just this idea of the burden that it is. And so, as a release, no one that's living on the face of the earth today started racism, right? Right? None of us, nobody living started racism, right? So we can let everybody off the hook there, right? But in this day and age, as we understand more and we learn more, we are responsible for more. So while we didn't create it, right? It is our responsibility to deal with it and with it effectively. And that doesn't matter whether you're in Toronto or in the U.S. There are some things that occur down in the U.S. that we don't associate with happening in Canada, right? The thing that we should take note of, though, is that there's some things that are going on here, right, at times that are more challenging, and I don't want to go into detail about that too much here today, but we racism is racism, right? And it doesn't matter where you are, where you come from, and it is an issue here, and that's what we need to be most concerned with, because that's what we can affect.
That's amazing, Mike. As always, one thing I heard you say right there is that you define yourself, right? So really, like, to Teri's point, making a change within yourself, and not letting the outside pressures of the world either, stop you from doing something that you feel you should. So very, very, very powerful. Ali, where do you feel the change comes from?
I mean, there's a lot of great things that were said, obviously, from Teri, from Michael. I think, change always, it comes from within. It's hard to follow up from what Teri said and what Michael said. What I would say, to kind of keep it as concise as possible, I think when I first started at Toronto FC, and at the press conference, someone asked me a question. I can't remember the specific question, but my approach towards that question and towards a lot of things, sometimes I rely on this quote by Arthur Ashe, and he says, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And I think that, in this moment, there has been this acknowledgement that we may be not who we think we are, but we need change, we have an issue, and we have to do something. And that is something that's different than I've ever experienced. And there's been more of this sense of universal acknowledgement that where we are in society has to improve from a justice perspective. And that's amazing. And to now acknowledge that, and then to find ways to connect, to communicate, to build programs such that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we can look back and be proud of, not just proud of the work that we've done and completed, but happy that we've made improvements, happy that we've made advancements, and we don't see the things that we have been seeing over the last 10 to 20 years. So there, from my perspective, there's been this real collective acknowledgement that we have to get around the table, we have to talk, and then we have to act. And based on those ideas and those programs, while we won't be able to change the world overnight, we'll be able to change a little bit at a time, step by step, and looking forward to the day 10 to 20 years from now where we've made improvements and we've changed as a collective.
That's amazing. This is some great insight here, and really around the theme of doing what you can, right? And knowing that we all have that ability to affect change. And I'm of that mind too. I really believe that, if we all have it in our hearts that we're going to do one thing every day to make the change as a collective, the world, we do that. I think this problem will be resolved a lot faster than anyone could ever imagine. And that kind of brings us into our last question here that I have for you guys we've talked about change, and the sports world making some change and the corporate world making some change, but what does success look like in 2021? So we're here, we've seen what happened, we've lived through the George Floyd incident, we understand that change comes from within, but what does success look like in the pro sports, in MLS, in the CFL, in the corporate space? What does that look like in 2021? And I'll start with Mike on this.
All right. I first of all, I want to say that I'm very proud to be on this panel with both Teri and Ali. Very thoughtful, very insightful, and so seeing our leadership emerge and in the spaces that they will travel is something that excites me. I am excited to see where MLS goes. I had a chance to speak to Justin Morrow, who is He is the league representative, the executive director of the league as relates to equity and diversity, and he's on our Toronto FC, and so he is a leader of the league that is in our city as well. Much the Raptors took a great leadership role in the basketball world. We have yet to be able to take the field, but we are thinking about it. And we look at our hockey guys, it's the transparency, the desire to do things is maybe as high as anyone, because they really don't know where to go and what to do, but they have this tremendous passion to make a difference. And so what does it look like? I think that if I had a vision, I would hope that we would exceed the expectations of what that vision is. Our leader just came into the house, and so she's readying herself, and we're trying to ready ourselves to support her as much as we can. So I'm not sure where we're going, but we have a great baseline, a great foundation, and now it's up to us to make sure that the foundation we've laid is fertile ground, and that we continue to work hard and be diligent at exceeding expectations, not just achieving what the expectations are, but exceeding those. I should be quiet and leave room for our other two guest panelists.
Yes, Ali, I'll throw it to you as to what your perspective of what success looks like in 2021 as it pertains to equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Yeah, thanks. It's a difficult question to ask, and I echo Michael's sentiments. It's an honor and a privilege to be on this panel with Teri, with Michael, with yourself. So I appreciate the opportunity. This year has been really, really hard. We have dealt with so much. We're dealing with a pandemic, a virus that it doesn't discriminate, and it's impacting our loved ones, from the case counts to the deaths. So that, coupled with everything else that we've experienced this year, has been really, really hard. And then we've all, in not just in TFC, but also in every single industry, every single business, we've been trying to figure it out and to keep a roof over our head and to have food on the table, and all these things in all different walks of life. Everyone in society has been dealing with, and then you layer on top of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and all these other deaths and that have happened, and shootings that have happened. Not easy, but I've had a lot of great optimism in terms of what has transpired this year. We have processed all these things and gotten together collectively, when you think about Canada and you think about the US, and we have gone out and voted, and we have elected someone in the US that we think is going to help lead Americans and also have an impact on the global community for the next 4 years in a positive way. That's a sign of success. We have collectively come together as a group within MLSE, all different parts of MLSE, all the teams, but also all the other areas at 50 Bay. And we've collectively come together to talk and think through. And one of the byproducts of that collective thought and that collective action is we're fortunate to have a leader in Teri, and she's going to help us, not for 2021, because it's not just about 2021, it's about 2021 and beyond. And so, I'm excited. I think there's a lot to be optimistic about. I just want to get to work. I think that as much as I think we've hurt this year we've also come together in a way that's been different, and it's felt natural and real, and academic and intellectual, where we can make change happen, and we can really do some powerful and beautiful things next year and beyond. And it's important that we, in order to have success, we do this thing together. And, all these video calls and all these phone calls and all these things, we've learned tools and we've built muscles that we never thought we really had. We never really exercised them. And that's going to serve us well, I believe, for 2021. I think during this pandemic, while we've had to stay home and do all these types of things, we have built some muscles that we didn't know existed. We've come together in a way that we've never thought that we could. We've brought on people like Teri and like others that will help strengthen who we are and help move us forward. So I'm excited. I just want to get to work, and looking forward to moving forward.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. And Teri, Ali and Michael mentioned it. You are, for us, you are who we're looking to. You are a leader in this realm, and you are going to affect change in this corporation that is going to, touch all walks of life, not only here in Toronto, but across this country and across the United States, with the influence of our athletes. What does success look like for you in 2021 moving forward?
Yeah, thank you. As I was listening to Michael and Ali, I'm still in the honeymoon stage, right? I heard the words, we have a new leader, and I had to sort of pinch myself to remind myself that they're talking about me. So I am humbled to be participating in this panel. I'm blown away by the talent before me. And I too want to get to work. I feel like this is my dream job, that all of the experiences that I've been fortunate and blessed to have over my lifetime have culminated into what I feel is the perfect role at the perfect time. And so success to me is really simple. I want to see a day when we have individuals who have aspiration feel that they can achieve their full potential. And getting underneath all of that is going to require a lot of work. Identifying those barriers that are systemic, unconscious, and in some cases conscious, is going to require a collective effort and will to address and remove. And so I'm energized by the opportunities and the possibilities for that work. I'm an optimist by nature as well, like Ali and Michael and yourself. And so I just look forward to helping the organization, because I really feel like I'm an enabler, and I look forward to enabling the organization, the community, our partners, suppliers, get a sense of what we stand for, what we stand behind, and what we won't tolerate, so that everyone can have, the best experience possible, whether you're sitting in the stands, working behind a desk, or otherwise. We all want to live our best life, as my son would say, and there's a way to do that. And I look forward to digging in and doing that work.
Wow. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking your time out of your busy schedules and hectic days to, sit down and have this conversation, because as you all mentioned, the work starts within. We all have a role to play, and you taking the time out of your day and making your voices heard is part of that change and part of that work that we have to do. And I want to thank you all so much. Without your volunteering, your time, these conversations aren't had, and that, the process of change is slowed down. So thank you for not only speaking it, but also, as you mentioned throughout today, doing the work, because that's how everything gets done. I also want to thank all of our fans for joining in today and being a part of this, joining in on this conversation, because you all will carry this message out into the world as much as we can. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this. And I also want to, thank our leadership team here at MLSE for having these difficult conversations and starting these movements and starting them slow and affecting change where we can, and doing things like, looking at our own corporation and realizing that we have to grow, we have to change, and creating, our senior vice president of equity and diversity and inclusion here, and really making this a focal point for our corporation, because I think we're in a very unique space. We have, some of the most influential people on the earth are athletes. They touch people from an emotional standpoint. People gather around the screens to watch, the championships. And, they impact so many young lives on social media and everything that they do. And to have a company that is behind this movement and pushing it, it's very powerful for me to be a part of. And I want to, thank our senior leadership team, our chairman, Mr. Tannenbaum, Mr. Friesdahl, and the rest of our, executive leadership team that have really championshiped this and pushed this forward, because, they have a lot of power and they're using that in a very constructive way. So for myself, as a young, person of color, I'm extremely excited and optimistic about the change that we are about to embark on and change and help affect. And again, really appreciate all your time today. It's amazing to be a part of this, and look forward to see the change that MLSE can help, and where the world goes from this. So let's continue these conversations. They're important, they're needed, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.
If I can speak very quickly on to the host, we want to thank the host for being the change. Who you are, the essence of who you are and what you do is that change. And they say you have to see the change before you can be the change. There are young people who will look at you and know, just by the way you move, by the way you act and carry yourself, that they can do that too. So thank you to our hosts.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Michael. Very humbling. So,
pleasure, Matt.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you, and let's all get back to work.
Thanks, team.